Hello and welcome to the Decentralized Consciousness Podcast. Today I am speaking with Brisket. Brisket, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really good, man. I'm really good.
Awesome. So, to begin the conversation, I think this has proved to be a very good starting off point. I want to discuss your spiritual background, the journey that you've been through the whole of your life, and if you could describe, how you have gone from being centered or well connected to yourself at points, and maybe the roller coaster of what it's like going through connecting and disconnecting, and sort of the sleep and awake kind of journey that you've been through, and what's kind of led you to the session facilitating that you're doing now.
Yeah, cool. I guess when I was around mid-20s, I started reading a whole heap of New Age hippie books, Eckhart Tolle and Paul Coelho, and a lot of those kind of New Agey books. I was at the time just trying to digest information, so it was purely mental. I was very much, I'm a logical person, left brain thinker, like many Bitcoiners, and I always thought I could think my way into enlightenment, and then once I achieved enlightenment, I'd just be able to carry that around with me and like some sort of possession, and live a fruitful, happy life. And that didn't work out so well. Around that time, I had my first child. I'd moved to a new city and started a contracting gig, and I was earning mega bucks. I thought I'd made it from a financial point of view. But then I started, I guess, feeling that was all empty. Didn't really matter what amount of money I earned. I just felt kind of hollow inside. And the more sacrifices I made to earn the money, because I was kind of faking it until I made it, to earn the big contracting bucks, I felt empty. And to fill that void, I started smoking a lot of weed, and I was stressed, and I guess I kind of hated myself for the false facade I'd been putting up at work. One night I came home from work, locked myself in my study, and smoked as much weed as I could. I started meditating, and just to kind of escape from all the stress, I started to surrender to everything. Like I just gave up in my mind and in my heart, and I started to cry, and my wife wondered why I was crying in a room with the door shut, and I don't know, I went to a really strange place. Like I felt like I was in another dimension, started crashing through dimensions, as in that state. And when she opened the door, I kind of stumbled and fell, and she didn't know why I was sort of staggering around, and she called the police, and they came and took me away to a mental institution where I was locked up for a couple of weeks. There's a lot of other details in there, but it was what I think of as my night of the long dark night, or dark night of the soul kind of thing. I felt like I died in that state. It was really really weird. I just accepted everything. Um, and then I found myself in this institution, kind of had all my privileges taken away. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I was kind of locked up there, and I really didn't like that feeling. And I guess that when I came out of there, it was like I'd wiped all my belief system. I sort of reset, I guess, who I was. I didn't really know anything. I thought everything I knew was not to be trusted, and I just started again mentally. So I just started like experiencing the world as a child. I remember going through the greengrocer and looking at all the fruit, and like a capsicum, and I'll have one of those. Like, I don't know what these things are. These bright colored fruits and vegetables. It was really surreal. And it took me a long while to rebuild my whole belief system. I just pieced it together bit by bit. But I had all this knowledge, like, so I'd consumed all this content. One of them was Conversations with God by something like Donaldson, I think it was. And I can't remember which of the beliefs, but I assembled a set of core beliefs from which to view the world. And the first one was there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's only desirable and undesirable. This whole concept of that's right, that's wrong, that's good, that's bad. It's really based on what you want, I guess. So I assembled these 4 or 5 core beliefs very explicitly, and then started resorting all my knowledge into these different categories and rebuilding my whole belief system. And then somewhere around there, I got dark pilled around the central banking system and the creature from Jekyll Island and all that sort of dark conspiracy stuff. And I resigned to having to go back to the fiat world to support my family. So I kind of suppressed the experience as being something that was bad or not desirable. But then at the same time, I was rebuilding my belief system with this new belief system that was somehow lighter than the very rigid structure I had in my mind before then. But largely, I forgot that whole, or I suppressed that whole pursuit of enlightenment and spirituality, and just went down the fed mines to grind away. We left that city and moved to a more peaceful city. Bought a house and then just ground away trying to repay my mortgage. But somewhere along the lines, around 2020, I discovered Bitcoin. So, a good 15 years later. And then the first thing I noticed was the fear lifting. So the financial fear that I had pretty much my whole life around how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to feed my family now? That started to lift, and I noticed massive changes within me. And I didn't really think about it too much until I got prompted to join one of Sama's momentum meditation sessions, which is probably about 18 months now ago. And yeah, I've just been meditating regularly and exploring that spirituality again, but more from a feeling side rather than from a head side, a mental side. So less intellectually and more emotionally, I guess. And what what I've started realizing is I've largely got the knowledge. There's not new knowledge I don't need to search for new knowledge so much as just practice more and feel I don't know, every time I have a breakthrough, it's not from thinking or reading, or it's more from it just seems to flow through me rather than I go out and consume it and then digest it. I'm just feeling my way through these days rather than try to force anything. Is that a little too much information?
No,
Yeah.
that was great. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all that. We've been through a lot of meditations and sessions and conversations together, and I did not know all of that. It sounds like you've been through quite a roller coaster spiritually. So I guess there's a ton of different things that we could cover as far as the direction that some various things that I've been thinking about in my life and how they relate to a lot of what you're saying. And perhaps the place that that I would like to take it, because you had mentioned going into the new age literature in like your early 20s. I've been listening to a podcast, actually a couple different podcasts that are older. They are from the anywhere between like the early 2000s to like the early 2010s. So they're a little bit older, I guess, as far as internet content goes, but they are based very strongly in rationality. One podcast that I'm listening to is called the Peace Revolution podcast, and the other one is called Gnostic Media. And they are very focused on the logic side of so they are leveraging they call it occulted. So occulted just means secret. So they're leveraging this occulted pattern for logical thinking called the trivium method. And basically the way they, in my opinion, because of my spiritual path, in my opinion, they almost leverage their rationality to a fault. It's almost become like their rationality, it doesn't allow them to use their intuition at all. But I also haven't gotten into the deeper topics if they ever talk about them. So the latest podcast that I just listened to, the latest episode, was on Gnostic Media, and they talk, and the guest that was on there, I'll have to see if I can find the name of the guest, but he talks about how there is sort of a there's in the New Age movement, there is a subsect of it that is misleading people, because they are what is effectively being said is that there is no right or wrong. There is no you had mentioned desirable and undesirable, and what is causing people to do is almost become so lackadaisical or uncaring, I guess, about the world, that they're not taking action anymore. And this is, I guess, this is confusing, right? Because it can feel so good to sit, meditate, heal, and then so confusing when you go out in the real world and you look at the actions that you take, and half the time, or much of the time, you're feeling fear. You're feeling, gosh, 90% of the day, I'm just taking turns because of financial fear, or I'm trying to please someone else. So, because you had mentioned these concepts, the New Age spirituality, and your core beliefs resetting, how have you experienced, or do you have a perspective on any of this?
One of the books I did read when I was younger was The Four Agreements. And when I read it cover to cover and went, yeah, that makes sense. It's really simple. Next book. I didn't really understand how deep it was, and I kind of forgotten all about it. And then I think it was 6 months, 8 months ago, I picked it up again, or I started looking into what the four agreements were, and then I grabbed the audiobook of the four agreements. I was like, wow, that's really profound. They're four simple agreements. It's like be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, and just always do your best. They're four simple, practical things you can do. And I was like, this is great. I started applying them to my life, and all of a sudden, people like when don't take anything personally was the third. I had an aggressive person in my life, and I was like, oh, don't take it personally. It's more about them. There's probably something going on in their life, don't make assumptions about what's going on, but there's probably something going on about their life. And then I went back to them with a kind of a very neutral approach, and just moved on rather than being triggered and starting an argument with them. So I was getting benefit out of the four agreements as lessons, and then I eventually went back and grabbed the audiobook of the whole book, and it's written by an old Toltec Indian from, I think, Mexico region, and he's passing on the wisdom of his people in this book. And there's a story at the start of the book that talks about, I think it was a guy who left the cave and had a profound experience, basically found enlightenment. Then when he went back to his people, he couldn't describe in words all the wisdom that he tapped into, and it was very much reminiscent of me when I had my first incident. Was I felt all this stuff, and I experienced all these things, and I knew all this stuff, and every time I tried to explain it to people in words, it came out and I sounded freaking crazy, and I think I deliberately stopped trying to describe what was going on within me, and I got scared of describing it because I didn't want to end up in a freaking mental institution again. And I've experienced similar things after that. It's like one of the 4 or 5 things I came up with was the truth can't be spoken. It can't be written down. When we speak, we encapsulate our thoughts in symbols, and we try and transmit them to another person, but they're really inadequate to describe that truth with a capital T. The bigger truth. We can kind of point at the truth if we're really careful with how we arrange our symbols and words, and we might encapsulate in a story or whatever, but at best we can point to the truth. And I think when we engage our minds too much with this dance of symbology and like what we're doing now, it's very much in the conscious mind. It's unable to capture that greater truth that you feel. You feel it, and all those wisdoms that have been passed down through the ages in mystical texts and artwork, and they'd point to the truth. The truth is everywhere. Know thyself. You are one. We're all one. You can say we're all one. We're all the same being, but intellectually you can understand that. But can you feel it? Can you feel that we're all one? When you feel it, it's very different. So I think there's a bit of a trap in going too far into the mental models, because some models are useful, but they're all wrong. That they're never accurate, or they never capture the greatness of all it is. At best they can point towards the truth. And I think some of the earlier stuff, I like the stories. The Paul Coelho did a really good job of putting that wisdom into stories rather than focusing on the facts. I think we can feel the truth within us, when things resonate with us, even in songs, artwork, we can feel it within us that there's something more there. We get goosebumps, or we get a physiological change within us. We get a bit of a tear in our eye. There's something there. You can feel it within your soul, or within your heart. I recently heard a really cool podcast from it's a Bitcoin podcast from the Freedom Footprint Show with Knut Svenholm and Volker, a German guy. He was talking about free will. Do we actually have free will? And he was coming at it from the point of view of your consciousness is a construct created by your mind, your physical body, to help you navigate the world, to survive, essentially. And in primitive days, we need that consciousness to run simulations. If I go and hug that bear, how's it going to work out? He's probably going to tear me to shreds. So I can simulate that action in my mind, in this consciousness, and avoid going and hugging the bear. Or I can run a simulation rather than having to run it with my physical body and end up dead. But I think as time's progressed, we've not needed to use that consciousness, that simulation for survival so much, and we've been able to, I guess, lift ourselves out of that fear-based behavior. And I don't know whether it was by design but this consciousness has far greater power. It can create the reality around us, not just simulate it. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how useful it is to be always in your mind, always thinking so much. I like thinking. I enjoy thinking. I love philosophy, but I'm not sure if it's conducive to living a joyous life. I've seen joyous people who know nothing of this, done no research, but they live a simple life. They don't live in fear. They don't need any money. There's no material requirements for them to live a fruitful life. I'm still contemplating the conversation with Knut and Volker was fascinating, because I hadn't really thought about what is consciousness. What is that entity that perceives the world, and who is the I behind the I, what is that construct? And he was talking about it from the point of view of you think you act, you think you can scratch your head. I want to scratch my head, I scratch my head. But your body decides to scratch your head before you decide. Your body is the one that moves your hand, not your consciousness. So you can't. Your body tricks you into thinking that your consciousness has control of the body, but really the body is in control. You can consciously decide I'm not going to smoke, but your body lights the cigarette up anyway. Who has control of the physical body? Is it you, or is it the body? Is it the mind? And so I've been looking and thinking about that from the point of view of, well, yeah, I might not be able to control my body, but I can control my beliefs. I can control my thoughts, or I can control my attention. I can't control what thoughts flow into me, but I can control how I react to them. I can grasp onto them, or I can let them just flow through me. And I've been finding that really fascinating and quite liberating almost. All those weaknesses I thought I had may not be under my control entirely. Maybe they're just things I'm playing out. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea because, we think we have free will. We think that we have control. But, in the decentralized consciousness, we talk a lot about programs, and we talk a lot about not giving up. We talk a lot about, I guess, falling prey to them or allowing them to run. But much of the time, when we become conscious of them, we realize that they don't actually need to happen. Which kind of leads me to my next question. So you had mentioned like you have become much more familiar with your feeling sense, and much less reliant upon your rationality, and really trying to make life more about feeling and using your thinking mind for other means. So from your perspective, what are emotions? What does it mean to feel and to have emotions guide you? Because one of the things in this hyper rationale podcast that I listen to is they rail on emotions pretty hard, but they also don't really. They almost speak about emotions as if they are a bad thing. They speak about them. They don't really speak about their usefulness or their purpose as if their purpose in the human design. I'm of the belief that we are created with these things for a very specific reason, and it is biologically. I don't know that there are many animals that have emotions. I think that a lot of animals, I guess that's a whole nother rabbit hole. It seems like my dog is happy a lot of the time. And, it seems like he can also experience sadness as well. But it seems to me that much of nature kind of goes through just trying to survive. So, and maybe they do have emotions, but it seems like our emotional tool set is much stronger and can actually lead to can actually lead to us taking a lot of these fearful actions, because the emotion of fear is so powerful, can lead us to living a life just steeped in fear all of the time. So yeah, in this podcast, when they were discussing emotion, they're talking about, avoid the fear, stop. You can basically use logic to melt away your fears, to understand things more, and see that we don't have to be so fearful about. When you see that you don't have to be fearful about a subject, when you understand it, you can take a more rationally based action.
Mm-hmm. So the fear one's interesting because what are you scared of? You, you grow up with all these fears, like you're just building on fears, and you fear. The fears are irrational. There's no logical reason why you should be scared of what people think of you. Like you don't have any physical, like your physical body isn't you. Like so everything physical is not something that can damage you. You're so much greater than your physicality. It's strange. Like the Four Agreements talks about the warrior, and I've always not been drawn into fighting. Like there is no fight. There's no war. Even with Bitcoin, we're not fighting the Fed. The Fed's going to die because it's a shitty construct. It's going to collapse. We don't have to do anything. We're going to flow into this new system that's going to just replace it because the old system's collapsing. There's no fight there. But the Four Agreements talks about a fight within, the warrior within, and it's talking about two enemies within, the judge and the victim. So the judge is the one who judges yourself, judges externally, and whenever you're judging someone with that person's really fat, or that person's stupid, or that person's whatever, you immediately do that within. Like you keep whatever standard you've put against them, you then put that against yourself. So if you just happen to be overweight as well, you then start judging yourself, which can then go into victimhood. I can't. I'm trying to conjure the victim mentality. It's not my fault. It's my bad genetics. And that judge and victim is something you need to constantly be fighting. It's a darkness within. It's particularly bad when you're doing it to yourself, when you're judging yourself, or you're playing the victim, because it leads to that. It leads to fear. It leads to anger. Those darker emotions. And when you let those emotions go, or you don't, you have the healing that we look for in the meditation sessions. When you heal those hurt parts within you, you don't have a lot of those emotions coming up anymore. They still come up, but they're a lot lighter. They're not as heavy and embedded as they were in the past. And then what fills the gap? Because you're always having emotions flowing through you. I don't know whether neutrality is an emotion, but when you're walking through the world and there's kind of the neutrality is almost like no emotion. It's you're just walking and observing and feeling the different energies that are flying around you, and then you notice the birds, and you notice the insects, and you notice someone doing a good deed to someone else, and then you notice someone doing something horrible, kicking a dog or something, that you don't like. And the emotion that comes from that is sadness. And I don't get the anger anymore that might have come before, because I can see I'm not judging them. I'm not judging the dog. The dog is experiencing pain. You know, he's not going to go into depression. The dog is experiencing pain. He does whatever reaction he feels appropriate, whether he runs away or bites the person, or it is what it is. You know, and I see people playing out their stories however they are, but I don't see them as separate from me so much anymore. It's like maybe that was me in another timeline. You know, I wasn't so awake. You know, I was quite deeply asleep, and you know, it has to play out the way it plays out. Um, I I can feel sadness and pain, and then almost instantly it flips to joy. You know, they're so similar. I think when you're talking to Oro, the he was talking about the pain and the pleasure. Um, you know, they're quite different emotions. Or sorry, joy and pleasure, quite different emotions. But joy and pain are very similar. That they're kind of two sides of the same coin. You know, you can experience pain and an immense joy that comes with that. They're almost flipped instantly within. I don't feel guilt anymore at all. You know, I used to, when Sama used to talk about filling your heart with love, I would sit there and think, well, what does love feel like? What is love? You know, um, now for me, it's a feeling. It's a feeling like I'm. It's almost like I'm God. Like I'm a part of God. God's part of me, and hence everything around me is me in a different timeline, in a different frequency, but it's all part of me. I'm not separate from it, and that fills me with this feeling that I call love. That up until I felt that, I couldn't describe what love was. I knew I loved my mom and my wife and my children, but what is that feeling, you know? And it was only reserved for a few people. I don't even think I could feel it for myself. Um, so I'm not I don't know. A lot of darker emotions have left me, or are a lot lighter now. But I don't know where they originate from. I think your beliefs shift, or they affect your emotions, and what emotions arise within you. And as we've been taught, we can, instead of resisting the emotion, fighting the emotion, making it stronger, we can experience the emotion in its fullness and let it transform or flow within us, flow through us. Yeah, it's a funny one because we all experience emotions differently. I wouldn't definitely wouldn't put them as positive or negative. But that goes back to that belief. No such thing as good or bad.
Well, I think there is validity to the idea that nothing is necessarily good or bad. You had mentioned the word judgment, which has a certain connotation, but For me, judgment has kind of become redefined. When I walk down the street and I look at a tree, if I see that tree as a tree and I see in my mind, I give it a label, I say, that is a tree, that is judgment. And
Mm.
and don't get me wrong, I think that there is an application for that judgment, for labeling that thing as truth. I think that truth, as we communicate it to one another through rational means, is basically just an average of a bunch of observations. So if I'm walking along and I see something dangerous, like the bear you'd mentioned, it's easy for me to judge that as being something that's potentially harmful to me, right? So there is something positive to being able to. There's something positive. There's something beneficial, I guess, because we're talking about positive and negative. So I don't want to get too confused. There is something beneficial to me and my ability to continue walking this earth and having a judgment around that thing in that moment. However, there are times, in fact, much of the time, we don't need to engage this rational level of thought. We can see the world without judgment and just observe it for what it is. So, one exercise that I
Kind
like
of,
to do, what's that?
it kind of comes back to why you're here. You know, if your purpose in this realm is to survive, then yeah, hugging a bear is probably not aligned with that purpose. But if your purpose in this realm is to expand your consciousness or expand who you are deeper and to grow and expand, then perhaps survival isn't the primary purpose. You know, it's kind of a, if you wander this realm a little longer, then maybe you'll get more experience and you'll be able to expand more. So I've been thinking about this because of I've been for a year and a half now trying to remove all fear from my life. And then I realized that fear has a very uh, evolutionary, like for your physical body to survive, fear is pretty important. Your physical body wants you to fear shit that's dangerous, you know. But you, as a soul, don't necessarily align with that fear, and that the fears of your physical body. So there's a signal coming through your physical body that um, bear dangerous. You should be scared, you know, and then you react to that, you know. You don't actually know that the bear is going to attack you. You know, stranger things have happened. I've had some strange experiences where I had no fear, and surprisingly, I survived. But it's a, you know, there's a dance, I think, with our physical bodies and our consciousness that goes on, and yeah, I'm not completely sold that staying alive is our sole purpose on this realm, and that also that we're not meant to just perish either, you know. But there's a kind of a dance going on. I interrupted you. I just wanted to introduce that.
No, I really appreciate you interrupting, actually, because what you bring up is something that we actually had a little bit of a conversation about in our facilitator group, and we talked about it in the context of a tiger, the the fear for survival, and gosh, what we discussed there is that just because this animal can kill you doesn't necessarily mean that it will. So I think if you look at the
you've seen when predators meet in the wild, there's a body language and a respect there between two predators. They don't want to attack each other because, evolutionary speaking, like they both have claws and sharp teeth, and if they were to fight, one of them would come out, or they'd probably both get hurt, or one of them would get hurt. It's high risk. They sense when you don't fear them. They just know. They know deeply within them when they're around another predator or around another creature that has the potential to harm them, and they will come close. They will do their threatening postures, but there's something within them that stops them from attacking. Whereas if you turned around and ran, instantly they would chase after you. But your instincts don't always serve your purpose. Now, twice I've interrupted you.
Oh, it's that. No, that it makes for great conversation. So it's completely fine. And what I was going to say to that end is I think that the mutual respect is a good one, as a really good perspective. The other thing that I was going to say, as far as the bear or the tiger, is if you were to pretend or envision in your imagination this concept of an ideal world or a heaven on earth, in that reality, if you see a bear where everything is one, everything is perfect, there is no judgment, I almost kind of get this feeling that's like, gosh, of course I should go up and hug that bear. I mean, it's alive just like me. It's just, the bear and I are exactly the same. No, I'm not going to do that in this reality. But that is caused by a fear that runs so deep that even trying to consider releasing that fear makes me feel like, oh no, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. That's something that I almost get this feeling within myself that I'm justifying this thought pattern to other people. Like, if I were to have this conversation with the people on that podcast around high rationality, they would laugh at me. And they would say, no, you're being fooled. This is ridiculous line of thought. Yeah, go ahead and hug the bear and you'll see what happens. But really I think that this high rationality prohibits us from exploring things from the ridiculous perspective. It inhibits us from truly, feeling with our deepest hearts, feeling from neutrality, which, you had mentioned neutrality is almost like no emotion at all. And I have a slightly different perspective on it, which is, and maybe they are the same, which neutrality is basically an observer of an emotion, a separation from emotion. So if you were to view this almost like a person, if you review this like Neo in the Matrix, who is observing his emotions as separate from himself, the body as something that is separate from himself, you would begin to see that, okay, all of these things that are in this reality are being constructed for me, including the fear that tells me to stay away from that bear. But if he and I are truly one, and we have that mutual respect that you talked about, gosh, maybe there, just maybe, there is room, as ridiculous as it sounds from a rational perspective, just maybe there is room for us to hug, as crazy as that sounds.
Mm. I think, yeah, the neutrality for me is a kind of playfulness. So it's like it's not like I'm not a part of the earth. I'm moving through it, and I have no expectations. So I have no, oh, that I hope there's not a bear around the corner. If there's a bear around the corner, I'll deal with that when I come to it. Um, it's sort of playfulness to it, and that's when I find source flows through me. I feel like I'm flowing. I'm in flow. Like it's like I just have these wonderful experiences. You know, I tend to have those when I'm not in my normal surrounds. So I don't have the dependence on me from my family. I don't have the familiar surroundings. I'm out experiencing the world, and I find it just beautiful. But it's not it's not indifference so much as just acceptance. Like whatever's coming will come, and I'll meet it when I see it, and react as I feel appropriate, rather than, oh shit, a bear, I better go climb a tree, or what do I feel driven to doing? When I see this bear, we'll look at each other and I don't know, maybe I'll meet my maker. But maybe we'll stare at each other for a while and then freak the bear out because this human's just standing there without being scared. And I don't know. I'm not a bear expert. I haven't even come across one in the wild. We don't have them here. Yeah, it's just I just drawn to doing that shit now. I don't have the fears I used to have. Maybe I'll not live as long as I could. It's almost like we should be giving people a warning to before we get them to let go of their fears, because really anything can happen when you let go all your fears, and embrace what's coming. But one of the things in the four agreements was around our biggest fear. What is our biggest fear as humans? And they proposed that our biggest fear is to truly live. We fear truly living, which is a really fascinating proposal. What happens if we truly live and truly express our greatest selves, our most authentic selves? Are people going to judge us? Are they going to reject us? Are they going to put us in jail, put us in a mental institution? What's going to happen when we start living? What happens if everyone starts living their true selves? It sounds pretty cool to me. But I kind of can see that as being a possibility, that our greatest fear is actually living our real lives.
I think that's very, very profound. When my son, for instance, he, or well, both my kids, my daughter is still very young, but you can see that desire to express his authentic self. He's in the middle of a restaurant, he's willing to scream or out of joy, out of just doing what he, of just doing what he wants, what he feels like doing at any moment. And, you know, there's a part of me that feels guilty as a dad in kind of suppressing that, because while I know that, yes, these are unfortunately the arbitrary rules that we have set for ourselves and for society, I know that what you are doing is just being yourself. And yeah, I feel sad pushing that away, because, and I'll just run with this example of screaming in a restaurant. You know, when he's just screaming out of pure joy and making a bunch of noise and dancing around and, you know, wanting to get up from the dinner table and run around the restaurant, the distortion that we are that holds us as parents in the chair, that holds us to these quote unquote rules of a polite society, we are doing it out of some kind of, it's done out of force, right? It's not like we're doing this necessarily authentically. We're doing it because if if I personally, as an adult, felt like getting up in the middle of my dinner and just dancing around, running around the restaurant, screaming, bumping into things, um, you know, talking to random people as they're having their meal, there would be consequences for me. At the, you know, probably at minimum, I would probably get asked to leave the restaurant. And at its worst, I could, you know, some kind of authority might get called on me, and like you had mentioned, end up in an institution. You know, these are so, yeah, the ultimate fear there is that someone is going to do something to us,
I've done
for
that sort
acting.
of. I've done
Go
that
ahead.
those sorts of things in a fairly safe environment, away from my normal day to day life. And what I found was it caused them pain. I'm 6'4", man. I'm a big dude. Like, people don't tend to challenge me. And when I act like that, when I act like a child, and act in a way that's not socially acceptable, people try to stop me. They ask me to stop, and if I continue, it freaks them out. Like, and I had fun doing it, but then I felt guilty around the pain that I caused them in disrupting their worldview. Um, I was playing. You know, I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to see whether that fear was real or not. That, you know, did I get kicked out of society? No. Like, I can, but I felt guilty from putting people through a situation that they weren't ready to experience, and they weren't ready for that sort of confrontation. Yeah, it's weird. Like, when you act like that, especially as an adult, if you're a child doing it, they go, "Oh, silly child." You know, the parents are really bad. They don't discipline their child. They need a good whack, or whatever story they tell themselves in their head to make that insignificant. But when an adult does it, it fills them with fear. Like, they don't know. You then become really unpredictable to them, and they fear for their safety, they fear for their property, they fear for what might come after that. You know, um, so I wasn't. I don't have that fear about myself so much anymore. But I don't act that way because of how it impacts other people, and I don't think it's fair to force them to I've come to the belief that this reality is a kind of a bit of a simulation, but I don't need to snap them out of the simulation just yet. I'm quite happy to flow through it and gain whatever expansion I can out of it. Yeah, I don't feel it's my job or my I don't feel like I should be pushing them to out of their comfort zone and I guess bringing that discomfort and pain to them. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, what's crazy is that there, like you said, there's almost this undercurrent of fear of one another.
Mm.
You know, all you're doing is just treating life kind of like a playground and being neutral, having no expectations for the result of whatever action you're going to take. You're just following, this inspired action that comes from a greater place, um, a greater intuition.
Mm.
And there's so many directions that I could take, but my models right now tell me that we are in a gigantic co-creation. So whatever experience that you are getting as a result of your authentic action is ultimately a reflection. The reactions that we get from other people when we are living out our authentic selves is actually an inner reflection as well, because I see everything as a co-creation. So when I act my authentic self and I see fear in return, I think that what a lot of what we're getting back is actually an inner fear of ourself that's so deep and underlying that that we don't even realize it, even when we're acting authentically. And so, I
Mm.
think that part of the reason that we avoid acting authentically much of the time is because we're afraid what's going to happen. Even when we do it, we still get some of that fear even deeper.
Mm. I definitely think mirrors, like everyone is mirroring what's inside of you all the time. I've yeah, I'm completely on board with that. The mirror. Um, yeah, it's an interesting way to look at that.
Yeah, and
But then
my
you're acting as a mirror for them as well.
yeah
It's a two-way. Yeah.
yeah. So there's the example of acting like the big 6'4" child and dancing around and screaming. Like, I can imagine that if you were to do that, how it would be very physically intimidating. But there's also, like, what I've found in my life especially is when I become less afraid of stuff, it really opens up my perspective. So and it freaks people out. So for instance, um, trying to give a pertinent example. So, like, right now, and this actually happened with the birth of our daughter over a little over a year ago. I became more open or less afraid of the concept of childbirth. I think that we have such a distorted view on what it means to give birth to a child. It's become a medical process, but it is the most natural thing that any human being can and has ever gone through. And obviously, me being a man, there are a lot of, I can feel it right now. I feel almost like, first of all, I don't deserve to be offering this perspective because I'm not a woman. And this is what I get back. This is what I get back from my wife. This is what I get back from other family who I'm like, hey, I think that if my wife were to go through the process of a natural birth, that it could be very, very powerful. And the reason that I'm open to that idea is because I'm not afraid that something will go wrong. And I'm not afraid that I'm just not scared of this process anymore. I just let go of these old beliefs, and so what gets back reflected back to me is these things like these inner beliefs which I just mentioned, which is, first of all, I don't deserve to have this perspective because I can't possibly understand because I'm a man. I can't give birth to a child. And that comes back in the form of basically being written off or kind of seen as crazy or a hippie or whatever. But the underlying belief there for me is that there is a huge opportunity for an authentic experience, an authentic one that will push you through, that would push all of us, myself included, even though I'm not the one giving birth to the child, that will allow us to experience such a natural thing in such a powerfully authentic way, that the healing that could come through it is just there's just no more powerful, like exponentially more powerful way to experience those things in life. Yeah.
The pain, like I remember my son, when he was born, my wife just had the gas, and he was on a baby monitor, so I could see when his heart rate was accelerating and when the contraction was coming, and I could preempt the pain that was going to come from my wife, and I could put the gas on her face, and she'd escape it. And if I missed, if I wasn't paying attention, because they start off quite a fair way apart, I'd vague out, and all of a sudden I'd miss the gas, and she wouldn't get it soon enough, and then she'd be in the middle of the contraction, and the gas wouldn't kick in until basically at the end of the contraction. I'd kind of missed it. I remember feeling helpless as a man. There was nothing I could do to take away her pain. But listening to you talk now, and knowing how powerful that intense pain, when you know that there's nothing being damaged or nothing is natural, you can't escape the pain. It's the sort of pain that you can surrender to, and then the pain completely shifts. Again, I feel exactly as you feel. I don't feel like I should be talking about it because it's not something. There's not the pain I'll ever be able to experience. But I've experienced extreme pain, and I've felt the pain shift as I've stopped resisting it, and it almost disappears, but it's still there, and it can become quite. I don't know how to describe it. It feels, you move past the pain. Like when you fear pain, it controls you. But when you accept the pain, there's a lecture by oh God, I can't remember his name now. I'll think of it in a second. I'm telling the story. He talks about the torturer, and being the torturer, torturing someone for information, and the torturer knows that when the torture gets to the point where they actually they're actually playing with the pain, where they've gotten so far past the excruciating pain that they're actually playing with it. Like they're playing with it to to just to feel something that they're they start laughing and they want to feel it. And the torturer basically has to kill them then because he's not going to get any information out of them. They're now immune to the pain. There's a great power in moving past the pain when you no longer fear the pain. And I think women have that opportunity in that moment, as awful as it is to experience and to see someone experiencing that. It's a great gift as well. Something a man doesn't necessarily get to experience because they just don't have that type of physical pain unless they're peeing out a kidney stone or something.
Yeah.
But it's without the physical damage that comes from that. You can chop your finger off, but then you've got no finger, like you've lost the finger. There's a very permanent impact to that pain. Is not not those one of those people that likes to subject myself to pain, but I certainly, when I cut myself, I'm not. I don't take painkillers regularly. I don't tend to freak out when I get hurt. I don't know whether my pain threshold has increased or something, but it's not something that worries me anymore so much. And you kind of have to almost welcome the pain, like embrace it, and then suddenly the pain disappears. Not always, but often. Once that resistance disappears and you kind of surrender to the pain, it can shift and transmute. And so, for a woman, that experience is in some ways a massive gift. My wife is incredibly strong for giving birth to 2 children. And I didn't appreciate that at the time. It was quite a while ago for me.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent reframe. I think that the society as a whole, maybe we're just not giving women enough credit. We're not giving them enough power to say that this is something that you can handle. This is something that creation has given you to experience something unlike anything else. And you as the divine feminine embodied in physicality have an opportunity to experience something that the masculine doesn't have the opportunity to experience. Yeah, I can feel like my wife coming into this conversation and just laughing at me because it's like, well, what is it that and I can feel in my heart that there is an opportunity there, and that we don't have to be afraid of all of it. It's sort of like, when I get sick now, if I can help it, I will just be present with the discomfort. I will just be present with the sickness. And this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I got a stomach bug, or the last time that I got a stomach bug and I was throwing up. As I was throwing up, I did my best to surrender and to feel the discomfort, the pain, the desire to just want to be better, right? And I truly believe, and I know that being able to do that was the last time I threw up. When I was able to be present with it and to kind of feel within, it was almost like I was releasing a bunch of stuff within something etherically, something that you can't touch it or describe it. When I was present with it, it was like something else was leaving my body. And so I think that when you don't push away these times of discomfort, and you are able to, when you're able to view them from a higher consciousness, when you're able to view them as not being personal, they act in such powerful, miraculous ways. And yeah, so people, my family thinks I'm crazy because I refuse to take, well, they think that I refuse, but really I just don't. It's like, I don't see the point. It's like, I don't take medicine for a cold. It's like, yeah, this is what it is. This is kind of just what is meant to be happening for me, right? And the more that I can be with it, the sooner that it will be over, I think.
Yeah, we don't like discomfort. The society we're in doesn't like discomfort. We let's sleep on these plush, soft beds with painkillers in the cabinet, and
You can't even
anything
handle
that
a cold
happens.
shower.
Yeah, exactly. We you know, and our bodies are falling apart because of it. They don't have any anything to stimulate them anymore. We live in these cushy climate controlled buildings, and you go, is this really beneficial to my greater self? Is some discomfort necessary? Otherwise, how can I grow? I mean, that's how you build muscle when you're bodybuilding is you put your body under stress, you damage your muscle cells, and then your body rebuilds. It's stronger, it's more resilient, it's more capable of sustaining an unexpected impact later on. To shy away from it and to suppress it and avoid it and hide from it, I'm not sure that it leads to a more fulfilling life. I like being warm when it's cold, and I like creature comforts, but I think there's a balance there that we've kind of lost. Avoiding all discomfort just seems a bit psychotic. Mm.
Yeah. So, Brisket, we are getting close to our time here. So, to kind of wrap this all up, maybe you could kind of give, from this conversation, kind of give everybody, if there was one piece of advice moving forward that you feel maybe there's one specific member of the audience or to the group that needs some kind of message from your heart. Is there anything for them that you would like to leave them with?
Um, I'm leaning towards you have nothing to fear. You're an eternal being. You you exist beyond your physical self, and you should work towards letting go your fears. But know that when you let go your fears, that your world would be turned upside down in ways you couldn't imagine, and that's okay. um, that's all part of the process. But I do think the caveat should be there that when you start dispelling your fear, letting it go, it's not going to be all roses and unicorns and rainbows. That there will be discomfort, um, and you will grow from that discomfort. And that's not a reason to hold on to your fears and to live in a sheltered bubble. Um, there's great change coming ahead for us all, and I think this helps prepare yourself for what's coming. Um, Yeah. I
Very
think
beautiful.
it's without that caveat, without it feels a little dishonest, or I feel like people should know that that it's not all roses. That the discomfort might come.
Yeah, it's almost like fear is kind of like avoiding growth in certain ways, But so is pleasure, I think, as well. It's just we don't see it quite as much. It's harder to point it out. So very beautifully said. This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm super grateful for your time. Before we go, if you just want to maybe tell people a little bit about how to find you, and I know that you're doing sessions as well, so talk a little bit about that, and that'll be it.
Yeah, was it, the website, is it Bitcoin-consciousness or decentralized consciousness?
Yep. So your profile is at bitcoin-consciousness.com/brisket.
Yeah, I'll get on to updating my profile shortly. I'm starting to do sessions now. I'm still got my training wheels on. It's value for value, so the most you'll lose is your time. I generally not on Twitter these days much. You'll find me on Nostra. Yeah, I'm pretty approachable generally. Thanks, Caleb.
Good.
It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll make sure that your Noster, your NPub is on your profile as well, so people can find you there. So
Yeah, awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Brisket, and I look forward to doing the next one.
Cool. Catch you later.